Before we start this course, we're going to try and answer a question that's often asked about Apex script and Apex graph, and that is, which one is better? Which one should I use? Which one is faster? Which one is harder to learn, etc.? Well, the answer to that question, all of those questions, is unfortunately the same, and that is, it depends. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on the resources that you have. It depends on who you are. And by analogy, we can look at something that will be very familiar to most users of Houdini, and that is VEX and VOPs. The same question is asked, which one is better? Which one should I use? Which one is faster? Well, again, it depends. So I've created a very silly little example here, just to illustrate why this "it depends" answer is true, unfortunately. I have a grid, and I have two little situations here, very, very simple situations. On the one hand, I want to raise the grid up by some amount in the y direction. And I've decided that I'm going to use VEX or VOPs for this. And in the other example, I'm going to apply some noise to the points. So with a point wrangle using VEX, I can just type at p.y plus equals 0.8. So for every point in this mesh, I'm going to add the value of 0.8. And if I display that, you can see that the mesh raises up by 0.8. So simple enough. What does that look like in VOPs? Well, if I go into this VOP network, you can see that I've taken the point position, which is a vector. I've converted that to 3 floats because I only want to address the y component. Taking that y component and I'm adding it to a constant value of 0.08 or 0.8. And then I'm taking these 3 floats, the unchanged x, the changed y, and the unchanged z, and I'm converting them back into a vector, then feeding that back into position, the p value, which is a vector. So simple enough, but requiring a whole bunch of nodes and a bunch of wiring, and I get exactly the same result. So in this silly example, clearly VEX is faster and better and easier, and all you have to remember is a couple of things. Whereas the VOP version, you have to convert, you have to add, you have to convert back. So VEX clearly wins in this case. What about noise? Well, if I take my grid and I remove the geometry and just keep the points, in a point wrangle, you can see that I've done nothing here because I don't want to do anything because noise is complicated and hard and I don't know how to do it. But in VOPs, we have a curl noise node. And if I look at the result of that, you can see that I've added noise to all those points. And I have lots of parameters here where I can change the nature of that noise. Well, clearly a single node is easier, but I haven't put anything here. Maybe the VEX is easier. Maybe it is faster. Well, it isn't. Because if I right-click on this curl noise VOP, I can go to VEX VOP options, and I can view the VEX code that this node is implementing. If I do that, I get a very big bunch of VEX. VEX, 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 lots of VEX. And I can come all the way down here and I can see code produced by curl noise. So this node is implementing one of these 2 functions with all of these parameters. We can see 0.552. That's the amplitude. So this parameter is being fed into this function as one of its arguments. And here, roughness 3393, there it is there. So clearly, typing all of this VEX into a wrangle, it will work. But I certainly don't want to do it. And I'm not very good at VEX, so I don't know how to do it. but I do know how to put a curl noise VOP down. So you'll find even very experienced Houdini users who are well versed in Vex, they're not going to write this curl noise by hand. They're just going to use the VOP. However, you are, of course, able to write your own Vex. Perhaps you have your own algorithm for noise and that you want to implement. Well, you can do that in Vex, just in a wrangle. But this sort of contrived example just demonstrates that it does depend on what you're doing. And it depends on whether you're comfortable with Vex in a text form. Some things are much easier to see in this way. Other things, like with the curl noise, are just easier and faster to do them in VOPs. So it's an unfortunate answer to that question, which one should I use? But it also applies to the Apex graph and Apex script. There will be some things that are fast and easy to do with the graph, but other things are faster and easier to do with scripting. So we're going to take a look at both. We're going to extend the asset that we made in the first course with just a small bit of functionality. And we're going to do that with the graph, and then we're going to do it again with Apex script, just so that you can see the difference, so you can get a little bit more comfortable with both, which will allow you to make this kind of decision. What are we doing? How should it be implemented? And what you're more comfortable with. So we'll see you in the next video.